Hello, everyone. My name is Louis Harris, and you are at the Record in Progress podcast. I started this podcast in the wake of the 2024 presidential election because I felt like I didn't do enough to have the election go in the way that I wanted it to go. And so I started this podcast, hopefully to create understanding, share stories and different perspectives so that we have a base of understanding and can create a path towards a unified society for all of us. And so I am lucky to have my next guest, who I know is musically inclined. And so is probably going to be some eloquent speaking person. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I'm going to have you introduce yourself. Go ahead.
I'm Joshua Uttech, grew up in Bellevue, Washington, and yeah.
Awesome. And so do you currently live in Bellevue right now?
No, I've been in Everett since 2016.
Okay. Excellent. And Josh, how do you identify yourself?
Do you mean like pronouns? Or
That's a good question because what I'm really asking is how do you identify yourself? Like
yeah,
not the socially progressive, what do we say when we're in a meeting? It's really how you'd
yeah.
identify yourself.
That's a good question because as I've become more philosophical and spiritual over the last 8 to 10 years of my life, I realized that the things we do are not really who or what we are. So it
Say that.
becomes tricky when it's, well, okay, well, I'm a musician. I think that was a pretty fair statement because through and through, ever since I was a little kid, I loved singing. I was wanting to play an instrument, and then I started learning instruments, and now it's become a job. But it's always been embedded in me is
Okay.
music. Yeah,
No. I hear you. And I love the direction you're going because part of the reason I created this was to just create understanding about different perspectives and to say that, oh, everyone is either who they're born as or their gender or their expression. That's not how we really identify ourselves. We identify ourselves as, oh, I'm a philosopher or I'm somebody who is community driven. I identify the black person or whatever. You're a musician and people know what that means. That means you have a core of artistry and know how to produce beautiful sounds, right? Okay.
I love doing it.
Awesome. That's great. That's great. The next question is, what do you do?
As of last summer, I became a full-time performing musician, singer, songwriter.
Sure.
I still have a part-time job. I was I went through a bunch of different jobs because of injuries. I was a carpenter. I got hurt, went back to cooking. Cooking was tough because of my neck injury. Got into being a barista in 2019. And then a couple years later, right after the pandemic, I became a supervisor. I ran one of the coffee shops for Amazon, one of the Amazon buildings for Compass
Okay.
Group in Seattle. And
Okay.
then in the meantime of that, I was always pursuing my music. And that has been going well and got busier. And last summer I started doing that full time and I stepped down and now I'm just a part-time barista a few days
Okay.
a week. Yeah,
So Josh, interesting. You mentioned that you were a carpenter. You weren't a union carpenter, were you?
I was.
Okay. And that's part of why we have these who are you questions at the beginning, because I believe that it just creates a baseline for people to be able to understand where your perspective is. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for illuminating who you are. I really appreciate it. What is a credential that you use most often to sell yourself on job applications?
Well, in the past, it was usually just like my experience and then just that I work well with others and I'm a hard worker.
Perfect.
Now that I'm doing music, it's pretty much just the live recordings I have of myself and the like Spotify and online recordings that I'm selling them with. And it also could be something like if I'm if I'm trying to get with a venue that's in a certain city and I've already played a few venues in that city, I'll mention I also play there and there and there, like your neighbors.
All right.
So I don't know. It's really like a weird industry. You're just selling yourself with your skill set. So it's like,
Right.
here's what I do. I'd love to come play your coffee shop or your bar or your brewery or
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. All right. So let's get into the meat of the interview, right? Okay. So first big question is how did you vote in the 2024 presidential election?
I voted Democrat. I
Okay.
was raised by a family that pretty much votes Democrat, working class. And yeah, and I tend to lean that way more. I wouldn't say I'm full left. I would call myself a little bit more of a moderate, but
Sure.
I tend to lean more to the blue side.
Okay. Okay. So then what are three feelings that you have about the results of the 2024 presidential election?
It's funny. One of the things I was thinking or feeling was like, I can't freaking believe this. Like I was saying, it's unbelievable. Then I was like, no, actually, it kind of isn't unbelievable, which is sad. So one of the main things I was feeling, I was sad, some bewilderment, just being kind of baffled. I just cannot believe that over half the country voted for this person, and then concern about what does it mean?
Okay.
Yeah,
No, I hear you. I hear you. Here's a question I have for you as a follow up to that. Okay. When you hear the feelings of being baffled and the feelings of bewilderment, is that because you didn't understand why other people would vote for somebody with Donald Trump's track record? Is it anything specific, or is it just in general like this dude is a bad dude because of
it
everything
kind
he
of
said?
it kind of a whole package, but there's key points that I think even because I don't like to say like all Republicans are bad. That's obviously not true.
Right?
But I was kind of like, okay, say you're Republican. Fine. That's fine. This is the way you tend to vote and whatever. But like, why is this your guy? Like
Yeah.
someone he doesn't respect the rule of law. That's been documented so many times. He's racist. That's been documented. He abuses women. That's documented. How many red flags do you need? And I think moral
Right.
character matters in a leader. It does. And I think a
Hey,
lot of people sell their morals for what they think is going to be an economically better president, maybe.
okay. Thanks for clarifying that. I tend to agree that at least our elected officials should have a higher standard, moral standard, right? I wouldn't want any of my elected officials using the language that he uses. You know what I mean? And so I
Right.
completely hear you. So the next question is, what do you fear most about the next Trump presidency?
It's kind of crazy. So years ago, I got fallen down the rabbit hole of watching documentaries, and some were more like conspiracy documentaries and stuff. So I'm very familiar with a lot of those different ideas. I don't really follow along with that stuff anymore. I kind of I just got tired of it. But what's interesting about it, what I do fear, because they was always talking about in some of these things about the global elite controlling blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't really get concerned about any of those things being actually true until the Supreme Court passed that law where the president is like immune.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
That kind of scared me a little bit because I'm like, and then the things I've heard that lean towards Trump thinking that he should be able to say do whatever he wants and Congress can't say shit, whatever. Basically, kind of in my mind is like the fear is that are we actually heading towards this democracy turning into a dictatorship
Right.
right before our eyes? That's kind of scary. I don't want to believe that actually happened, but here's what I did think that was kind of scary was
Yeah.
all right, so there's all these people that follow this guy,
Yeah.
whatever reasons they follow him. Say he decides in 4 years, no, I'm not giving up power.
Right.
We're actually going to be true Americans like they claim to be and unseat this guy for
Yeah.
being,
Mount
not
up.
completely ignore our actual rules of our democracy and say, no, no, yeah, I like it. This guy can rule for the next 50 years or whatever.
Yeah, I know that is a real fear that many of us have. God, what was it? I saw a quote where it was like, the closer you move to like authoritarianism and a dictatorship, the harder it is to move back to a democracy, right? Because it starts with propping up this leader and giving them all this power. But if that power erodes the checks and balances that we've had in this country since its establishment, you're right. The folks who are waving the flag and vote for Trump to save American stuff, I respect them and their American rights to do what they do and choose how they choose. But the question is, like you mentioned, is if he starts showing signs of ruining, dismantling our democracy and taking total power, are we really willing to mount up, right? A passion and patriotism that we voted, some of us voted him in by, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's that whole "Make America Great Again" thing. That's great sentiment. This pastor at my
Right.
So spiritual center I go to said something interesting last week. He said, "Aren't we still great already though?
Say that.
Making us great again. Yeah, we can always get better, but we always have been great
That's right.
because of what our principles were founded and we have lived by. And look at how much change we've had and how much struggle we've had to make the change.
Right. Right.
Civil rights is probably the most important human rights. Civil human rights is the most important thing. The fact that we have people out there, I don't know if it's half the country or what percentages, but they're basically saying, no, 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 the trans don't deserve the same rights as me. And the gays don't deserve the same rights as me. And whatever that people, I don't agree with their lifestyle. That's not American. I don't think, I think that's just, it's, people are confused. They don't really understand.
Yeah, no, gosh, that is a good point because, and I'm interested if, because it sounds like you welcome a broad range of ideas, right? You at least don't like to be in the dark about the other side. Is that an accurate statement?
I try.
Yeah, and I only say that because musicians, they're connected to, I believe, and I'm sure you understand this as the spiritual person you said you were. There's a thread that connects us all, right? And I
Mhm.
know that artists and creatives have a connection to that thread that comes through as creativity in music, right, or art or whatever. But I do believe that we're all connected to that, and so it's good to understand the diversity of perspectives out there. So
Mhm. Mhm.
okay. So here's the next question for you, Josh, is what do you hope most about the next Trump presidency?
It goes by quickly
Yeah.
with as little damage as possible to the, like you said, the checks and balances and the
Yeah.
positions of power of where the power resides.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, the founding fathers, they knew, dude, they came from the
Listen.
aristocracy here. That's why our constitution is written the way it is, because they were like, no, no, no one person is going to rule us and have the one say anymore. I don't think people understand that who are like all for when this is the thing. I didn't realize this till I looked it up, but I guess in interviews, Trump has said that he wants to just be able to do and say whatever. He doesn't want to have to go back to Congress. He even said that I should have just stayed when they stole the election, which is, I've heard people that still believe that is true,
Right.
but
Right.
yet I've listened to enough news sources that I trust that it's, and like they were saying that there was no evidence found. So
Yeah.
I don't believe in the big conspiracy cover-ups anymore that, oh, it's all cover up. If like I tried to share a thing about this project 2025, which I understand a little bit more about it now that it's not written by Trump or whatever, but he
Sure.
stood admitted that he flip-flopped on it saying, I don't stand by it, whatever.
Right.
But there was a thing I shared about this thing on overtime and somebody kind of jumped down my throat. And so I just deleted the post. I don't have the energy to get in the argument.
Yeah.
But he said one thing they said was like, I don't think I'll ever believe anything that lamestream media is saying. So it's like now we have this divide of whether it's truth or not. I'm not
Right.
that because my side didn't say it was. I don't know. It's very upsetting and confusing, and I think that's the problem is people are just ill informed and you know.
I hear you. And it's it can be exasperating trying to figure some of this stuff out about the other side and the systems and how they've influenced how people have voted. I look at the erosion of the education system. I do look at the distribution of media and information and how the internet feed algorithm world, right? You don't even you cannot know what's happening on the other side of an issue unless you are like actually going and finding that specific information, right? Otherwise, you're just going to see stuff that aligns with your likes and whatever consume, and you just miss out on a whole other half of the world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So here's the next question for you. What do you believe about the people who voted opposite of you?
Like I don't want to speak too ill on people because I believe inherently most people are good. I've seen that just in the different types of jobs I've had.
Mhm.
But I think I don't know what the percentage is. I know a lot of them vote Republican because of their religious beliefs. Typically, a lot of the Christians they vote red, and that's
Right.
due to abortion and stuff like that. My only problem with that is I think it's ill-informed to believe that Donald Trump is okay, he may call himself a Christian, but
Right.
I was raised Christian, and now I just don't really identify with any religion, but I'm very spiritual, and I still hold a lot of those values and beliefs of my Christian upbringing. But
Sure. Sure.
if he may call himself a Christian, but he's not a good Christian, clearly, because a good Christian doesn't abuse women and respects the rule of law and, doesn't cheat and doesn't steal, is not a con man. So I think that's a problem right there, is to vote for somebody just because of this is what I always vote. That's a problem. I think a lot of the people are just ill-informed. There's been a lot of misinformation about his track record that has been spread on one side, that people believe, oh, I vote for him because he's a successful businessman. Do you know how
Right.
many times this dude has declared bankruptcy? Have you spoken to any of the people who have spoken out about him and his business practices? And I think a
Right.
lot of them said they're just confused. I know one person I was talking to said that their boyfriend voted for him just because he has a small business. Like, he hates the guy. He doesn't agree with anything that the guy has done as a person, but he thinks he'll be better for his business. So that's how he's voting.
Right.
So it's tough to say, oh, look what you've done. But
Sure.
when people think they're doing the right thing for their business or their family or their religion or their beliefs, I just think it'll be sad when, I believe, karma comes around and the other shoe falls off and they realize they were duped by a con man.
Yeah. Yeah. I maintain the belief, or at least I have maintained the belief. I don't want to say I'm questioning what I believe, but I am certainly questioning what I know about people. You know what I mean? Because I really hoped that people in this election would see the arguments that you're talking about, the moral character, the honesty, and the policies and the track record. I would have hoped that people would have been able to see through that, but I just don't know anymore, which is why I created this podcast, because I really want to talk to people and just better understand different perspectives and hopefully create a pathway forward for all of us. So
Okay.
thanks, Josh. Interesting. And I want to pivot a little bit spiritually, because when you say spiritual, what does that mean? Just, I know what that means because I actually also identify as spiritual. But, for folks who don't totally know what that means, what does that mean to you?
That I believe that there's something bigger than just us in these bodies and like on this planet, and then we die and there's nothing. I believe that there is. So it's weird. I'm still kind of figuring out my thing, since I've kind of like distanced myself from the Christian side of things, even though the church I do attend, it's actually called the Spiritual Center, but
Okay.
I I tend to call it church because I'm used to saying that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
used to not call it God, but then I was so used to calling it God, and I just started calling it God again. But just
Yeah.
like the source that we all come from, like we say, we're all connected. We all come from an energy source, which is crazy that now science is actually starting to prove some of these things.
Okay.
All the energy here comes from the source, whether it's us, everything. So
Yeah.
we all return to the source.
That's right.
Uh, so for me, it's just that there's something bigger than us. And if you live positively and try to do good within your life, and you're trying to, what do they say, consciously contact the source, like when you're praying, meditating, all I know is ever since I started doing that, my life has gotten better and better and better.
Excellent.
And I want to stay on that path. So that's what spiritual is to me, is being good.
Yeah. Very beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for illuminating that for us. I agree. And one thing I've learned about being spiritual is that there is there's almost unlimited interpretations of everything you just said, right? And if you one of the things I've learned is that if you try to look at the world through one lens, you miss every other lens, right? And I've learned that you have to look at things holistically and comprehensively and with an open mind to really be able to grasp the magnitude of what you're talking about. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, thank you for sharing that with
Yeah.
with us. So the next question I have is,